Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine. It's great to have you here. My guest this week is actor-producer Carolina Bartczak, whom you may have seen in episodes of The Listener or Covert Affairs, or in the features Brick Mansions and Plato's Reality Machine, and you'll definitely be seeing her in theaters pretty much everywhere this weekend as Magda, the very human wife of one Eric Lenscher in Bryan Singer's X-Men Apocalypse, opening Friday, May 27th. Carolina chose Volver, Pedro Almodovar's 2006 drama about the tangled lives of two Madrid sisters, Raimunda and Sol, played by Penelope Cruz, and Lola Dueñas, and how their shared and separate histories collide when their mother, played by longtime Almodovar collaborator Carmen Maura, unexpectedly resurfaces. It's a complicated, emotionally volatile film with a specific chemistry that was reflected in its Cannes wins. The jury gave Almodovar the Best Screenplay Prize and awarded Best Actress to all 6 of the principal stars. A little word of warning. We generally expect listeners to be familiar with the movie under discussion, but seriously, if you haven't seen Volver at least once, it would be a terrible idea to play the rest of the show. Go buy the Blu-ray. It's dirt cheap on Amazon right now, and immerse yourself in Almodovar's glorious world. Then come back. We're here for you. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I don't know how it's happy, but it is a happy movie. This movie, I haven't been able to get it out of my head since I saw it, I think probably 10 years ago. It's a movie that I feel like Almodovar was like, hey, I'm just going to take a bunch of really beautiful moments and string them together and make an entire film out of it. That is cohesive and it works perfectly.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, each scene has its own sense of beauty, even from violent moments to just conversations, to very emotional moments. They're all so beautifully done. And the thing that I think the reason I really, really love this film is you don't really see that many American films that have 4 female leads.
Well, not unless it's something like How to Be Single. Like it has to be more overtly commercial.
It has to be more commercial.
You don't get a lot of dramas that just focus on female characters.
Yeah, and it's
to
also
the exclusion of the males and characters in this film.
Yeah, and these women never talk about men. And to me, these women are the women that I see in my life. Women who are powerful, who are flawed, who are emotional, who are so loving, and it doesn't matter what happens between them. There's always a love that holds them together, even through the death, quote unquote, of the mother. They're always held together. And those are the women that I'm familiar with in my life, especially coming from a European background where personalities are so strong. But I don't see that in Hollywood films, and I have such a desire for that to be more prevalent in films. Like, I was watching Jessica Jones recently, and have you watched it?
Yeah.
It's so good. And there's Jessica, and I can't remember her best friend's name. Patsy. And at first, when we introduced Patsy, I was like, okay, that these girls aren't going to like each other, because that's how it is in TV and film, is that women aren't nice to each other.
Right.
And then as the show develops, you see that their love and their bond to each other, and they're committed to protect each other. And I'm like, that is familiar to how my life is. All my girlfriends are so kind and gentle, and I just don't see that enough in movies. Yeah, it's weird that you'd mentioned Jessica Jones, because it was something that struck me as well, in that the whole mind control thing in Jessica Jones lends itself to this elaborate abuse narrative, which the characters are all fully aware of and contained in, like, it's their history. Yeah.
And Volver, weirdly, lines up with that in the emotional intensity. There's no extra normal stuff, but there kind of is, because it's Almodovar and everything he does is exaggerated and enhanced.
It's all heightened. And what's funny, I was thinking about the first time I saw the movie, I wasn't sure. So first of all, you can't decide whether this movie is a comedy, a mystery, a melodrama, a regular drama, or like a Hitchcockian.
Yeah. When
Paco is murdered, it looks like a Hitchcockian film. Is that even a word, Hitchcockian?
Oh, Hitchcock. Absolutely. Trust, I'm a film critic. It's absolutely a word. But yeah, no, it's when you suggested the film, I I remember thinking, oh, that's the one where, and then I realized I was remembering every Almodovar film.
Yeah, that's the one where there's a really strong female character, and they're all amazing and beautiful, and there's a lot of vivid colors.
Right.
Oh wait, that's
and
all
also,
of his.
Yeah, and also someone dies. Okay, also yes.
Yeah.
But it's but yeah, as you say, it is an incredibly over felt experience, I guess. And I interrupted you, and I feel
no problem. Oh yeah. So what I was gonna say is, when I saw the movie the first time, I for the entire movie still didn't know if the mom was a ghost.
Okay.
I was the whole time I was like, she might be a ghost. I'm going to accept it. And then only when they have when Penelope Raimunda and her mom are reunited, when she says, "Are you dead?" and she goes, "No, I'm not a ghost." I was like, "Oh, yeah, she's not a ghost. That makes more sense."
Sure.
However, I was willing to take whatever that Pedro Almodovar was giving me because it all kind of worked and made sense.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly constructs a world while you're watching where that's possible. I mean, everything. There's so many ideas flying around with his work anyway that I'm just trying to figure out which one to fix on and start with. I kind of came up as a critic while he was establishing himself as well. So Matador was playing at the Bloor when I was just starting to review films, and it was that kind of world where he was this outrageous art house habitué where you would turn around and there would be a new provocation from him. That's how they were presented. Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown was the film that everybody saw and thought, oh, he's going mainstream, and then realized, no, he's not capable of doing that. And then he went off again with Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. And then by the time he delivered Volver, it sort of feels like a valedictory run. Like this is the accumulation of everything he has made and everything he has done, and he's this classicist. And it still feels like a film that no one else could have made, that he's trained us for 20 years to see what he's doing and how to understand this movie, which is why you're open to the possibility that, you know what, that might just be a ghost. This might not be real.
Are we part of a big experiment with Pedro? Like we're just the rats in a cage, and he's like, okay, you're finally ready.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way.
For exactly what I want to present to you.
But there are auteurs who build, in that weird way of making absolutely sure the audience is ready for their film. And if you're not ready, if you haven't seen 5 of the 10, you're going to be lost. It's a really strange gamble, and yet Volver is packaged in this sort of classic melodrama packaging where it looks and sounds and feels like a 50s film, either by Hitchcock or maybe Douglas Sirk, where you just these sumptuous colors and these incredible soundtrack aspects, both the music and the sound itself. And it just hypnotizes you into going along with it. Yeah.
I also find going along with it, it doesn't have a very definitive 3-act structure. No. As we're trained in Hollywood films, it's so easy to predict how you're going to feel at what point in the movie. In this movie, I'm still not even sure what this movie is about. But from each scene to next scene, I've seen the movie 7 times, and I never can remember what comes next because none of it. It's not a linear film.
Yeah, no, it's almost an anthology, really. I mean, it's structured as a series of tales.
Yeah, happening. Yeah, and in a Hollywood film, you'd have in the first 30 minutes, we figure out what the hero's journey is, and you could argue that Paco's death is going to be what the movie's about. It is not about Paco's death at all.
No, not barely. He registers, but it's not about him at all. It's not about him at all.
And the closest that I've been able to kind of superimpose this film onto a Hollywood structure is, by the time it seems like her goal in the movie is to not look at the past. Is to keep moving forward in her busyness and never have to face the past.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the series of events happen with Paco. All of a sudden, she has to revisit sexual assault, especially like incest sexual assault with her daughter, which luckily she was able to prevent. Her daughter didn't have to go through what she ended up going through. And then the rest of the movie, it's funny because her mom is there, but they never meet until almost the 3rd act in the film. I think that's the end of the 2nd act is when they finally meet and she has her meltdown. Mm-hmm. And she can no longer run from the past. She has to face everything that's happened. And then in the 3rd act, she's able to rebuild her life. And I think that's why I was wondering why she buries Paco in that fridge beside the river. And it could have been so easy for Almodovar to say, okay, and then you pack up the van and you leave. But she makes a tombstone for him on a tree.
Yeah.
And I think that's her being like, I forgive you, not only to Paco, but for everyone, for all the men in her life who have brought her sadness, and also her mom, who she was so angry with that her mom never noticed that she had been abused, that it was almost like an end to a chapter, and she was saying, I forgive you, it's time for me to leave this all behind.
Yeah, it felt to me like it's that classic, it's almost a noir trope. You know, you create you put the X on the map, or you hide the treasure or the fortune or the falcon or whatever it is. But this felt like a signpost that she could avoid in the future. Not that she's dragging herself back to it, but if she sees that, it's like, oh, that's right, I'm not going there again.
Yeah.
But it's a conscious decision. Everything that, and this is where you get into the amazing Cruz performance, who I'm so ready to write off Penelope Cruz in English most of the time, because her line readings tend to be the same, and she's never as convincing as I think she could be, but that's because I've seen her Spanish work, and she is amazing. She's more incredible. Often than not. And in Volver, she is, This is, like, we're recording this the day after Xavier Dolan belly flopped at Cannes.
Oh, he didn't do well?
They hated it.
Oh, no.
I haven't seen the film, obviously. Yeah. And the response was apparently, like, he was booed and it didn't go well.
But you know what? Who cares? He's made so many great movies.
He's a fairly volatile director as well, so they might be responding to that. But...
Yeah, also, people are he's figuring out his art. People throughout their entire careers are figuring out their art. No one's gonna do 3-pointers every time they make something. Is that a saying? I don't even think that's a saying.
I think so. But what Almodovar is doing in Volver, and what Cruz is doing specifically, feels like the kind of thing, the stylized emotional realism, if that's even a thing, that Dolan is trying for every time. And Almodovar doesn't do it every time. Sometimes he's very reserved. Things like Bad Education or Talk to Her, which are almost metaphorical treatments of the stories they're telling. And here, Cruz is just so real in an unreal frame that it is sort of doubly painful to watch her and doubly impactful. And that's, I think, what Dolan is trying to do every time out of the gate, is to create that sort of situation.
You should hire Penelope Cruz.
Well, it's weird that he hasn't talked to her yet, or he probably has, but they haven't worked with her yet. But I can see her doing really well in his world. Yeah. Because what she does here is, I mean, she was good before, but this is probably the best thing she's ever done.
This is hands down the best thing she's ever done. It feels, like you said, it feels heightened, but it feels so real. She can on a dime go from being angry to smiling that smile where you immediately forgive her for yelling at another person. Yeah. And just, you can tell Almodovar loves women. You can tell he treats every woman with such respect. And I was reading that, because her breasts are very highly featured in this movie. Sure, they're a narrative point.
They kind of are. Yeah, in a couple of shots. Yeah. This sounds silly to be talking about, but their placement is important to the story at least 2 different moments in the film. Yeah. I'm glad you agree with me. Yeah. It felt like a tightrope walk for a second.
No, I agree. But I think Almodovar said, I may be a gay man, but I still think that breasts are beautiful. And I'm like, you're absolutely correct. When they're not overly sexualized, when they're just part of what a woman is, they are so beautiful.
Right. Well, it becomes like a form study here.
Yeah. And there's no... Usually I struggle with movies that really highlight like a female's breast, where they push them up and point them out. It's distasteful.
Like a different type of storytelling tool, right?
Yeah, it's distasteful.
Direct eroticizing.
Yeah, and you're saying like this is a sexual object, and sexuality is so heavily present in Penelope Cruz's performance. Mm-hmm. But it's part of her power. Yeah. And I think he's appreciating her beauty instead of being like, I want to do something to that, you know?
Yeah, she's not put forward she's never put forward as an object.
Never.
In the film. She is, what was that terrible movie she made? Oh, Woman on Top. Okay. Every now and then in the States, they would try to frame her as a sex puppet.
Yeah, oh God.
Because that's how they process her. She's a European. She uses her body in her performances. Well, I don't know. Let's treat her like somebody from the 50s or 60s. Like
that makes me ill.
Because it's the only way they could figure out what to do with her.
Yeah.
But in Volver, there are scenes of Penelope Cruz just cooking in a kitchen and working with things, and it's tactile, and it's not sexual, but it is eroticized. But it's not eroticized in a demeaning or negative way.
Not
it's
at all.
a way of showing us, and her facility with a knife, among other things. But she is powerful in domestic situations as well as in the heightened stuff that's going on elsewhere in the film.
Yeah.
And I think Almodovar, I know he uses actors as bodies. It's one of his things. It has been all along. But with Volver, he finds a frame again. He finds a way to do it that harkens back to all of cinema somehow, all of the things he grew up watching. Yeah. And it doesn't feel exploitative so much as investigative.
Yeah. I feel like he just wanted to get close to her and just be a fly on the wall while she's making a martini or the mojitos, or she's cutting those tomatoes, or she's doing the dishes. I could watch her dial a phone and be fascinated with how she does it. Even, it's so interesting that she, because this is one thing about Almodovar as well, is that he will watch someone do something very mundane. This movie, had it been done in Hollywood, would be 30 minutes shorter. Because we wouldn't watch someone walk across the street just to get to the other side, or watch someone make a phone call to rent a van. Like, we just sat there and watched her make a reservation.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting, and I was like, make another reservation. What would that look like?
Yeah. No, the mechanics of Raimunda's life, and the more we learn about them, are more interesting, just to see how she manages all the things that go on in her life, and how the rest of the movie sort of rotates around her and finds room for the other characters that are existing with her. Mm-hmm. But it's, I guess, if you know what Almodovar is up to, and you know what he usually does in his films, these digressions and these moments of calm are also kind of signifiers that you should pay closer attention. But the casual viewer might have just thought, oh, I don't know why this is happening. It's like, well, it's because we need to see her process. It's, it's a Chantal Akerman choice. Mm-hmm. And now I really wonder what his version of Jeanne Dielman would look like.
Yeah.
But so how familiar were you with him with Almodovar and his storytelling style when you saw this?
Oh, you know what? I wouldn't even be able to map out when I saw this film and when I saw his other films. Mm-hmm. This is the one as an actor, I look at her role in this film and think, if I could only be given that part, and be given a part surrounded by these other beautiful, wonderful, soulful women. Right. I think I'm just so attracted to this role. This is why I've watched this movie 8 or 9 times. And also, there's something so gentle about Almodovar. There's a scene where it's close to the beginning of the movie where the mother is already hiding underneath the bed. And oh my God, that's what it is. It breaks my heart every time when Raimunda is taking a pee. He watches her take a pee. And it was interesting. Where she's taking a pee and she smells her mother's farts.
That's right.
What, if you think about it, I had a dog as a kid. I still remember what his farts smell like. And it's like it's going to maintain a place in my brain for the rest of my life. And something as significant as a mother, to make that connection between her mother, it's such a beautiful moment where she's like, it smells of my mother's farts. Mm-hmm. And she wanders into that room, and the point of view of the mother, I'm sure that the mother hasn't seen Raimunda or I don't even know what the timeline is. Maybe she hasn't seen her since Paula had been born, so maybe like 15 years.
Yeah, I was going to say it's at least a decade, yeah.
Yeah. So the first time she sees her daughter in 15 years, she sees her ankles. She just sees her ankles walking along the floor from the point of view underneath the bed. And how heartbreaking is that? That's the first time you see your daughter who you love so much, who you have so much to say to. She's so close that she could even reach out and touch her ankles, but she can't. How beautiful is that as a filmmaker to say, this is how I want to present them to each other after 15 years.
Yeah, and because of its placement in the film, we don't even really understand the impact of that until later. Yeah. Until maybe second viewing, third viewing. It's just a piece of something greater that seems to be what he's after in this film, is how everything returns to a greater impact and how everything builds. And you can really, I mean, this was sort of the theme of All About My Mother as well a few years earlier, is you can really only understand someone once you've understood the totality of their life as a subject, as a fictional subject. And we're just here to put things together as best we can until we really, we run out of story.
Yeah.
So he just keeps things percolating and coming at us.
Yeah, I guess we don't even really find out what the movie is about until the big confession, which is
it's a good long
3/4 of the way of the, like, it's the end of the second act in my mind, is where we find out that Raimunda had gone through this sexual assault, and this is why she distanced herself from everyone, which is why the mother came back, which is why Agostina's mother is killed, which is why her dad is killed.
Yeah.
And you have no idea that that's going to happen, and that's what the entire movie is about. And I guess it's that big confession. I mean, that moment in the scene where she sings the song. Do you remember that scene in the restaurant?
Yeah.
First of all, there's this really great moment where she's just sitting there smelling mint. He's just, like, there's some action happening in the scene, and she's kind of looking off into the distance and smelling mint. I mean, what a beautiful little touch.
Yeah, and it connects it to the scent stuff earlier, and throughout the entire film, there's a sense of that.
Yeah.
But so weird that would be something that you would choose to make a metaphor or a motif in a movie where the audience cannot smell it. Yeah. We're all interacting with our own memories of smells in that moment. Yeah. It's not anything that he can do. You can't represent that. You just have to trigger it in people.
Yeah, it is a sensory overload, this film, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
With all the colors. I was also wondering why he featured the color red. It's like a crimson, like a Coca-Cola red.
Yeah.
Why is it...
Well, I mean, it's all over. It's all over the Blu-ray case.
They're all wearing these... It's the same color red. Is the bus is that color. The sweaters, she's wearing a red and white striped shirt. Then her daughter's wearing a red and white striped shirt. Then the restaurant is red. And I kept thinking, like, what is red? Why would he choose red? Is it... red can represent passion, anger, jealousy, all these things. And in the end, I was like, I think he picked it because it's really pretty.
It's certainly possible.
Yeah, he's like, if Spain is a country, if you ever walk through the streets of Barcelona, it's just made to be beautiful. Gaudi's art is everywhere, and it's just made to be beautiful. And I was like, maybe that's why he chose the color red. I couldn't think of another reason. I don't know if you could.
It's just it's certainly the most vivid. And it would. I thought about it for a while I was watching. I was just trying to figure out what the scheme was. But I think it really is just overdose. It's overwhelming. And also, I wonder if, because I'm a nerd, if the use of red just came at a point for him, because he'd made films with that are drenched in color before, but he had complained once, I remember this, that there was poor representation of his films on video. The reason that they didn't work as well, he thought, I think it was when the Criterion Collection released Women on the Verge, that the color red doesn't look good on, or didn't at the time. It didn't represent very well because the way AV signals were sent to televisions, it split the reds, and so you get these blurs and these faded reds.
Wow, you are a nerd.
I am
it's
a huge
amazing.
Nerd. Huge nerd. But it wasn't until DVD came along, and then subsequently things got better in terms of the technology and HD video, that you could actually get red to look right. So maybe...
So he was repressed.
Or he was encouraged.
Yeah.
I mean, Matador is pretty red, but if you've ever seen the old VHS or DVD copies of it, it's smeared. It really doesn't look good at all. It looks kind of ugly. And I've seen it on film, and it's not ugly. I mean, it's incredibly stylized and gorgeous in its kind of messiness, but the colors don't smear and separate the way that they do in the previous presentations. Volver, I'm pretty sure, was his first film to be released on Blu-ray, and it is definitely the best looking thing he'd done.
It's so
years.
voluptuous, the film. Everything about it. Even I was reading that Penelope Cruz wore a prosthetic butt.
I think I remember that.
In the film, because he had her watch Sophia Loren, and that's because he was like, that's the character I want to go for, right. This passionate, loving, motherly, but sexual creature.
Yeah. Kind of an Earth Mother, but really much more carnal.
Yeah, there's a very strong carnal element to her. So he had, and she's not a large woman, so he had her put a prosthetic butt on her, and you can see You can see it when she's walking, and it's so beautiful. It looks so good.
It is weird that anyone would think that it would be necessary to further sexualize Penelope Cruz just based on the work she'd done with him alone. But yeah, it's the right decision because it creates, even unconsciously, that heightened reality of things being bigger, brighter, thicker, heavier than they are.
Yeah.
And it feeds itself in a weird way.
Who do you think is the older sister? Soleil
Of the two?
or Raimonda? They never say that, and I've been very curious as to who would be the older sister.
I don't know, now that you mention it. I was going to say Raimonda as the younger sister, and I'm using every episode of CSI in my head to frame it. Like, she probably would have been more likely to be abused if she was the younger sister,
Maybe.
But that's just television. I don't know that that's actually true.
Maybe I've thought about this because she has that.
Because the resentment between them, maybe she failed to protect. Maybe Soleil failed to protect her, or that I'm trying to put things together in my head, but I have no idea.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure it out. I think she seems younger. I'm the young child, and I'm definitely the more spoiled and mercurial person in the family, okay. So that's why I'm connecting that maybe she was the youngest child. But Soleil has this calmness about her, but also a very childlike quality about her, which is why Raimonda kind of bosses her around. Yeah,
which would more likely make Raimonda the older sister.
Yeah.
Although I know plenty of bossy younger kids. I'm the oldest in my family, so
okay.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm bossy. I like to think I have a quiet authority, but no, probably not.
Yeah.
No, the family dynamic, but that is something else that the film doesn't immediately reveal, and you have to unpack as you watch it and figure out who's missing and why and where the holes in people's lives are. Mm-hmm. And again, I never think of Volver as a plotty film, although it's all plot. It's all backstory plot. And front story.
Yeah.
And when you picked it, I was trying to remember how to pitch it. I was trying to think about how to do the introduction of the episode, which I'll record later, so you don't need to worry about it. But I dug out the disc and I realized that the plot is barely coherent in the description because you don't want to give anything away.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't really explain it in a coherent way.
Because it's not about one thing. You can't say a woman protects her daughter from the sexual advances of her not actual father,
right.
But she doesn't know that.
Right.
Because that's not what the movie's about.
Yeah. No, you can say, the standard line is for almost any drama, especially melodrama, the standard pitch is always going to come down to you can't outrun your past.
Yeah.
Which, again, it is the case.
Yeah.
But she's not trying to. She's not outrunning her past. She's confronting it head on.
I think she's trying to outrun it.
Part of her, maybe. Some of her behavior is, but the thing that she's, I guess, what I mean is that she's already confronted it. She's dealt with that stuff, and she's trying to move forward. But I don't know whether she's trying to outrun it as much as just.
Huh. Yeah. See, I found that's what I was trying to figure out. What is.
And what even constitutes the past in this case?
Yeah, to me, the fact that she left her small town, moved to Madrid, and never comes back to this town, didn't speak to her mom for 14, 15 years. Mm. That, to me, I thought that she was trying to outrun her past. And then her mom coming back into her life, it's literally an explosion in her life as she has to at that moment talk about what she hasn't talked about for 15 years.
That's true. She is, she's clearly upset by the return of it, so she's not at peace.
She's definitely not at peace. Yeah. And I think that's why she could have, for example, buried Paco before she ran into her mom. That could have happened. But Pedro Almodovar didn't do it that way.
That's true. Yeah.
She buried Paco after she sees her mom and reconnects with her mom. So it's almost like it's almost a ritual. She's burying him and moving on.
It's motivated by that, as opposed to something that she'd been planning. Yeah, that's a completely fair point. I think I've misread that.
I mean, I'm also not a cinephile and expert in this, but that's just
definitely seen the film more than I have. More often and more recently, most likely.
Yeah.
But there's something about Cruz's performance that maybe it's not inner peace as much as it is just certitude, but she carries herself with this sort of centered confidence.
Yeah, she does.
She doesn't panic. She doesn't freak out.
She does.
She gets angry.
She gets angry. But also, he wrote into the script that she goes back to working in restaurants. And the movie is called Volver, which means to go back. Mm-hmm. And it seems like she almost has to go back into the past in order to move forward.
Right. Maybe this is the last cycle where you just come back out again.
Yeah, and maybe she comes back out of the labyrinth and therefore gets to continue her life in a more healthy way. Mm-hmm. Even that moment where she says to her daughter, they're at the party and they hear someone starting to strum a guitar and her ears perk up and she says, "Listen, this is the song that I sang 15 years ago." And her daughter says, "I've never heard you sing before." And that almost brings Penelope Cruz to tears when her daughter says that. And she says, "You haven't heard me sing before. Would you like to hear it now?" And she goes and sings the song Volver. And to me, that means that she had repressed all the singing, the joy had been packed so deep inside of her. And that it was slowly starting to seep out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. That's another thing about melodrama, too. It can convey characters reawakening to life through the vividness of the cinematography and the mise-en-scène and the sense of it. But, yeah, that's actually making it literal in that scene, that this is her reconnecting with that part of herself. But no, you're right. I've completely misinterpreted that.
You're gonna have to rewatch it, and then we can have another debate.
I am perfectly fine to do that. It's a splendid film, really, and the one that I think of as his most personal, even though it probably isn't, because I'm pretty sure All About My Mother is really.
I don't think he can make a film that's not personal.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to be. I can't even think about the last. He's been such a fixture in the art scene that the last couple of movies he's made have not been received quite so tremendously, to the point where now I can't even remember the title of the last one.
Broken Embraces?
Yeah, Broken Embraces, which is sort of actively Hitchcocking The Skin I'm In.
Oh my god.
Right?
Oh my god.
That's pretty good.
That movie gave me nightmares.
Well, I think it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has a film at Cannes, I think, tomorrow.
Oh my god.
Isn't the next one Giulietta? Yeah, no, I should take back the dismissal of all of his recent work, because The Skin I'm In is actually really, really good.
It's so creepy.
But also uniquely not him. I mean, it kind of does. It pulls back to the older body horror films that he was sort of flirting with in the 80s. But
and I remember the colors being it's all white, isn't it? Isn't it very
whites
subdued?
and grays.
Yeah.
And flesh tones, of course. But he's a filmmaker who, so he went from Volver to Broken Embraces, which is another Women in Trouble film starring Cruz.
Yeah.
That was really dismissive of me. The Skin I Live In, which is absolutely unlike anything else he's done lately, and not a melodrama, but a creepy, cold body horror film. Yeah. And then I'm So Excited, which felt like a throwaway. I'm very curious to see Giulietta, because I don't know anything about it. It's playing tomorrow, and we'll learn more then. But I'm currently very curious. But this is a guy who has also made diversion pictures, stuff like Kika and The Flower of My Secret and Live Flesh. He was sort of in the wilderness in the 90s before he figured out what he really wanted to do with All About My Mother. And in Volver, I do think I don't know that he peaked, but he absolutely hit the culmination of the thing he was doing.
Yeah, it seems that everything that he's been wanting to do manifested itself perfectly. Yeah. In this movie, whether it was the aesthetic, whether it was the stories, the relationships between everyone. And I'm still amazed that he was able to make like a coherent linear film.
Yeah. Which is still kind of rife with not flashbacks exactly, but callbacks and pullbacks and pieces of the past. Just to build on what you were saying, I think it's amazing that he made this movie and that people got it and that it actually landed with everyone.
I think it got like 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, it's got 4 stars from Roger Ebert.
Yeah, I don't remember a negative review. I'm sure there were a couple, but it doesn't feel like the kind of film that you could miss. Like if you people could maybe reject what he's going for or say they've seen it before, but I don't think in this case that actually applies. This felt like the perfection, like the apex of the Almodovar films, such as they are.
Yeah, and I think when you read some descriptions of the film, people say a comedy starring Penelope Cruz, and then the next description is a melodrama starring Penelope Cruz. Next one, a mystery starring Penelope Cruz. I mean, how skilled do you have to be as a craftsman to be able to put all of those aspects into one film and confuse the hell out of anyone who's trying to describe the film?
Yeah, it is all of those things. I think if, 50 years from now, you'd be able to point to this and say, oh, it's an Almodovar picture. The way that people look at, the birds and say, oh, that's Hitchcock, or Written on the Wind is, oh, that's Cirque. Mm-hmm. It is its own thing in a way that only tracks back to him. And it's great that Penelope Cruz is the face of it, because that way you can point people to it instead of, oh, it's this weird movie by this guy who you may not have heard of, featuring a bunch of actors. You know who Carmen Maurer is? No? Well, I have to show you 5 or 6 other movies. You've got Cruz, her face as the focus, as the complete face of the film, but also representing everything. That weird look on her face on the poster does actually convey everything about the movie.
Yeah.
It's not easily described, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah. Her performance in it is just one of the most beautiful performances I've seen. In those hoop earrings, I mean, who could pull those off?
That's true. I could not. It's definitely beyond me.
Yeah.
So the rap question on the show is always the same as well, which is
I'm scared.
No, it'll be fine. What, if anything, of the film have you used yourself or incorporated into your creative DNA? Is there a piece of Volver that can be found in your work?
Oh, I want that prosthetic butt. The next movie I make, I'm definitely doing a prosthetic butt. You know what? I don't know if I've had the opportunity to play such a sophisticated and multidimensional character yet.
Okay. Which
is why I've started to move into producing a little bit, because I want to see more of that out there. I think if we had more films like this in Hollywood, it's hard to be sexist and misogynist when you see such powerful women.
Yeah.
And we don't see that in Hollywood. We see relationships between women in film being always very passive aggressive or directly aggressive. And I would want to make a movie like this where you say, no, this is how I experience my female friends. And it can be dark, but it is so full of love and light. And that's what I would take away from this film, is that I want to keep pushing these stories. There's so many moments where the mother bursts into tears, but they're all like laughter tears. Yeah. The moment after she finishes singing the song, her mom is lying. I mean, what a beautiful shot. She's laying in the car hiding and then just laughing and crying simultaneously, because it's such a beautiful moment. It's such a connection between a mother and a daughter. Yeah. I mean, that's what I want to be seeing more of.
So how do you do that? I mean, how are you personally trying to build that? Are you chasing scripts? Are you working with people? Are you...
I have a group of friends that we've started making short films. We made a short film that went to the 48-hour film challenge, and then won the 48-hour film challenge here, and then went to the LA challenge. And actually, I love the character that I played in that film is a woman who's a con artist, and she's beyond arrogant about her. I mean, she looks like me. She looks like a Parkdale hipster or whatever, and she can go around and she steals people's wallets and steals change from restaurant tables. She's so arrogant because she can get away with it, and then that's part of the story.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm also in the process of trying to get a feature off the ground. Yeah, I would love to push more stories like this. Like, what a beautiful Beautiful story.
Oh, it's great. And I think it's also kind of quietly wonderful that you can be in this gigantic thing that you're in and still spin out into that direction. You know, the idea that you've been part of a big superhero machine and you don't want to do that immediately afterwards because they seem to infect people.
I mean, if they were to say, here's another one, I wouldn't be like, no, I'm making a short film.
But from your perspective, you've made a small independent movie. Your character is removed from all the big stuff.
Yes, and that's the best part.
So you just play a person.
I just play a human being who is placed in a difficult position.
Yeah.
I'm pulled away from all of the hoopla of the film, which my favorite part of that film is the fact that there's the dramatic moments between a husband and a wife, and a husband being confronted by his past.
Yeah.
I mean,
those are the things that, I was going to say, those are the things that Volver is about. Those are the things that drama is about.
Yeah. I guess that's the lesson. Do you have anything you're running away from that I need to know about?
Not this week.
Okay.
Just packing.
Just packing, right.
Just these boxes that you see everywhere around us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so as far as producing goes, I'm glad to see people, and I guess that's part of the digital revolution too now, that the tools are cheaper, so it's possible to explore these things without getting, studios or giant production entities involved. You can make the movies you want to make.
Oh, absolutely. And you can push the projects that no one else would be willing to pick up. And, you can make a short film. If you're creative, you can make a short film for, from start to finish for $1,000. Yeah. Get a couple friends together and put that money together. That's not so bad. Our last film that we're shopping to festivals right now, I think our final budget was $1,400. That's after post sound, color correction, 3 days of shooting. No one got paid on it except for obviously the sound people, because try and get a sound person to do something for free. I mean, they deserve. I mean, they are craftsmen in their own right. But you can make projects for really, really cheap, and I think that's the best way to do it, because make your mistakes with a really, really low budget.
Yeah,
that's the best thing that you can say to any aspiring filmmaker. Just make a lot of mistakes on really cheap projects.
Yeah.
And then so that you're not disheartened to make the next one.
My thanks to Carolina Bartczak, whom you'll see alongside Michael Fassbender in X-Men Apocalypse in theaters everywhere this Friday, May 27th. You can also check out her short film Femme Brûlée on YouTube, and keep an eye out for her next short, Fox Trouble, on the festival circuit later this year. Kristen Brune's in it. You can find Carolina on Twitter at Carol Bartczak, CarolBartzak, all one word, and you can find Volver on Blu-ray and DVD from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. Dirt cheap on Amazon right now, seriously. And for rental and purchase on iTunes and Google Play in the US. In Canada, you can find it on Netflix. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review for us on iTunes, that would be very, very kind of you. This week's call sign is Overheated Naturalism. Thanks for listening.